What's up? Welcome back to Project Freelance. This week on the podcast, I am talking to drone pilot Chris Anderson. He is based in Alberta, Canada, so I'm going to be talking to him a little bit about what it takes to fly a drone professionally up in Canada. The rules are a little bit different. The process of getting your certification is different, and the jobs are, similar, but still different. And I wanted to talk to him about growing his business, how he found his rates, things that I think could really help you guys out if you are drone pilots out there yourselves. Chris also hosts a podcast called the Drone Trainer Podcast. He's also got a bunch of training courses online at thedronetrainer.com. But before we get into this podcast, I just want to let you guys know that down in the description, there are a bunch of affiliate links that I think will help you out. If you need things like gear for your camera, if you need a drone yourself, if you need a GoPro, if you need a backpack, there are a bunch of links down in the description that will help you guys out finding the right gear for you. Not only that, but there's also stuff down there to help you track your mileage, keep track of your expenses, general adulting things that I think will help you out if you are a freelancer trying to build your business and you're trying to get your expenses and you're trying to get your adult life in order. Definitely check out some of those links. And last but not least, I have a book out now called No Tracers, an Urban Explorer's Diary. It is about the abandoned places I like to explore when I'm not freelancing. So if you guys are interested in that kind of stuff, I would love it if you picked up a copy of my book. I will be signing them for you and I will be sending them out. Super excited for you guys to get your hands on a copy. justtheletterk.com/no tracers, but a direct link is down in the description as well. All right, let's get into this podcast. Chris, please introduce yourself and what it is that you do as a freelancer to the audience.
Sure, name's Chris Andy, and I am a drone pilot. So I started freelancing with drones in January of 2014, and it's now developed into a commercial business as well as an online drone training platform where I show people how to fly and how I do certain things.
So you've been freelancing with your drone about as long as I've been freelancing in general. In 2014, I moved to Los Angeles from Australia and started freelancing here. So talk to me about what it took to get your drone business up and running.
It started off with, how I got into it at first, I was one night before bed, I was just reading an article and they mentioned there was a realtor that was using something called a drone in California to take shots of his high ticket properties along the coast. And I was always into photography. I was doing wedding photography and portraits as well at that time. So I read about that and I thought, well, that's really cool, like taking a camera up in the air. So I bought one the next day. And then I started reading about all the rules and regulations and how to officially get going with it. So I didn't have any content or anything like that to show, but what I did is I went around to a couple of golf courses and basically said what I could do for them. And it was a lot of trust on their part, I guess, to, take me at what I said, not being able to show any demo reels or anything like that. So started off that way, and a lot of them bit on just my verbal proposal. And that summer I received all of my permits to be able to fly commercially and then completed some of those golf courses, and then the rest just really started taking off from there. And then actually it wasn't even, I don't know if a golf course was my first one or if it was second, but I was posting some photos and stuff on Instagram, and one of the local realtors got a hold of me and said, "Hey, I see you've got a drone. I've got this listing. Can you take some shots?" And I was like, "Yeah, I can." That's what that guy in California was doing, so I can do that here too. So it just kind of grew into a variety of different angles and industries to work in.
And where are you based out of?
I'm in Alberta.
Okay, so you're up in Canada, so you've got completely different rules than we have. I don't know if they're completely different, but let's go back a little bit. How did you get into photography? How did you get into this kind of stuff in the first place?
Photography was always just a passion from when I was younger. I remember having some disposable cameras when I was young and just having fun with those things, playing around with film and things. And then once the digital camera world came around, I think my first camera was like a 0.5 megapixel or something, and it was like a game changer because I could shoot at will and it didn't cost me per shot, right? So that's when I really started to, get better and start honing my skills. So I started off with like a Canon, I think it was a Canon PowerShot A50 was the first one that I owned, and then went up through a couple Sonys and then landed on Nikon. And then, the portraits and wedding side of things, it was just more of an ask from friends at first. And then I thought, well, if they're asking for it and I can create something nice for them, why don't I put this out to the public and see what happens? And yeah, it took off, and I really had a lot of fun doing that. But once I discovered drones, I've really moved away from that side of things. I haven't done anything except for close family requests. It's just been more on the drone side of things. I enjoy that quite a lot more. It's not always, the beautiful lit locations and pretty people and stuff like that, but it's definitely, it's got me traveling a lot more. I've traveled, all over the place to capture scenery and various locations and sites and things like that. So I've really enjoyed it. But I still do a lot of photography on the side. Every time I go out with my drone, I take all my kit with me, and I'll take some photos as well too from the ground perspective, because I still truly love that side of photography as well.
Yeah, I totally understand that. And it's cool that you bring your gear with you. I do the same thing just in case, you never know if there's going to be something you might want to capture either along the way or when you get there, or even at the property you're at, or whatever you're capturing. So I totally understand bringing all your gear with you. That also makes you more of an asset as well, having multiple things to offer to people. So let's talk a little bit about the regulations when it comes to flying up in Canada. Where did you study? Like, did you take an online course? How did you study for your drone stuff?
I can speak to both the Canadian and the American regs. I'm pretty familiar with both of them, but we'll start with Canada. So up here we have a licensing system. So everybody that flies, regardless if it's commercial or recreational, needs a license now if the drone is over 250 grams, which most of them are. So to be able to get your license, you have to do an online exam for either the basic or the advanced. And if you go the advanced route, in addition to the online exam, you have to do a flight review with a Transport Canada designated flight reviewer. So you have to go out and actually fly and show off your flight skills, as well as all the regulatory side of things to show, do you know what kind of airspace you're in? What's the weather? How did you check it? Are there any aviation hazards or events nearby? Like a variety of different things that you have to check. If you have an emergency, what are you going to do? You have to be able to cover off all of those during your flight review. And if you pass that, then you receive your advanced permit, which allows you to fly in controlled airspace and based in a variety of different airspace. Our rules are a little unique in that with that advanced permit, you can't just fly anything anywhere. It's still a combination of the license plus the drone. So you need to have the right drone that's permitted to fly within controlled airspace, for example, and certain distances from people. So the standard is no controlled airspace, and you have to be at least 100 feet away from people. But depending on what system you're flying, a lot of the DJI systems, the most popular ones out there, they will allow you to fly in controlled airspace, as well as up to 15 feet away from people not involved in the operation. So that's a huge step forward compared to the 100-foot distance that we used to have to deal with.
Yeah, that's crazy. Only 15 feet away. So we've talked about Canada's airspace regulations. Let's talk a little bit about America's, if you can talk to the audience about that a little bit.
Yeah, so down in the States, you guys have something called a Part 107. So under the FAA has created a licensing system. It's similar to ours, except it's only on the commercial side. So if you're flying recreationally, you don't need that Part 107. But the 107, the way it differs significantly, I think, from ours is that you get that license, but it doesn't allow you to do everything. In addition to the license, you have to apply for waivers to allow you to do other tasks, such as flying at night or flying in controlled airspace, or a variety of other things that that don't just come automatically with the license. The other unique part, and I'm a little bit surprised about this, but I imagine they'll go this route eventually, is there's no flight test or anything. You just do your exam, you go down. It's an in-person exam where you have to go and fill out a multiple choice test. But once you've passed that test, you're signed off as a drone pilot, which is astonishing to me, because it's like handing someone the keys, like, oh yeah, okay, here, you passed your paper test, now you can go drive a car. Like, really? You can? So I think that, there's a big step that's missing there, and I'm sure they're going to add it on, in future, future rollouts of the rules and stuff. But yeah, otherwise, it's similar in a way that you need to get your license, but just a couple more steps in addition, and then a couple things missing down in the States. But yeah, that started in 2016. So this is the third year now. that 107 has been in place in the States. And I speak to a lot of pilots on my podcast as well too that are working in the States, and it seems like a pretty good system. Once you get all the nuances out, like how to get your waivers, how to apply for flight in certain airspace, and once you get those systems down pat, then really it sounds like a pretty good system.
Yeah, so I just recently got certified, so I've been having a blast picking up jobs here and there, and it's been such a fun time just to go out and fly the drone and be able to fly the drone and not feel any kind of pressure to like, oh my God, I need my certification, because once you have it, you're pretty much good to go. Like you said, like you don't have to do an in-person flight test, which I also think is a little bit crazy. Like I had to take my exam at a place where they offer helicopter training. So people were literally training to fly helicopters while I was there. And I was just like, maybe I should show them that I know how to actually fly this thing. But yeah, it's so interesting that it's so different from here in Canada. And here, all you have to do is go online and you can fill out a form, and then boom, you have a waiver and you can fly wherever you want. Well, not wherever you want, but within whatever the parameters. So for people out there, how do you go about getting waivers in Canada? I mean, I guess you don't have to, right? You just
we don't have
get to go.
No, we don't have them.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah, so the one thing that we have to do is we have to coordinate. If we're going to fly in controlled airspace, we have to coordinate with Nav Canada, who controls the airspace here. So it's a pretty easy system. It's an online form that you fill out, that you put in your coordinates, your desired dates, times, what altitude you want to fly at, just some of your emergency procedures, like if this happens, what are you going to do? What's your plan? And then you submit it, and usually they get back to you within a couple hours. It used to be like a couple weeks. The system used to be very, very slow, but now it's actually quite a bit faster. I know it's not instantaneous like some people would want, but I think for the most part, if you plan properly, you should have some time between planning and flight. And yeah, just fill out that form. They'll send it to you. If you need to do an unlock with DJI, you can just submit that documentation that you received back from Nav Canada, showing that you have permission to fly in that airspace. And that system is lightning fast. Like the last one I did last week, I submitted it, and I actually received the approval email from DJI before I got we've received your request email. So there was somebody there reading it and clicking the button before their automated system was able to shoot the email back to me. So yeah, they've got things down pat.
Well, yeah, I think down in the States we're still a little bit behind. They say you need 90 days ahead of time to plan out your stuff with the FAA, and I think that kind of holds us back because, for example, I'll get a gig today that needs me to fly tomorrow, so like, what am I supposed to do? I don't have 90 days. So I think that our system is kind of holding us back in that way.
Is that for waivers, or is that
that's for waivers
else?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you can get a blanket waiver, right? Like for a year period or something like that. So I think that's ultimately, if you're going to be working commercially or flying often in certain areas or certain airspace, I think that longer term waiver is definitely the way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. You're totally right. I'm working on getting a couple waivers, but I haven't even gotten my actual certificate or my actual pilot's license yet. It's been a couple weeks now since I submitted online. And yeah, they say it takes a little while to get your actual physical license. And until you get that, you can't apply for waivers. So I'm just like frustrated, just waiting for the process and waiting for the system.
Yeah, they have to print off a paper license, right? Like it's the old style, rather than just emailing you a PDF saying, here you go.
Right, yeah. So they email you like a temporary license or whatever, certificate that you can show if anybody needs to see it. But yeah, they have to send you like a physical paper license, and it's so slow. It's like such a slow process. And you think they would figure out how to make it faster, especially with all these drone pilots out there trying to get their licenses at the same time.
Yeah, sometimes things don't move as quickly as we'd like, but yeah, it's good that you, at least once you get your electronic version, you can still go fly, but you do have to wait for the waiver purpose. Why is that? Is that because they want you to send a copy of your physical license with the waiver, or what's different that you have to wait for?
They just want you to be able to submit your actual license number, and you don't get your actual license number until you get your license. So
I see.
Yeah, you can't really apply until you get that. So let's talk about your rates. When you first started out, how did you figure out what to charge people for your services?
I just guessed because there was something that was it was new. There was nobody flying where I was, and I didn't know really where to base pricing on. So I looked at what I would charge to do like a portrait session or like a half-day wedding or something like that, and kind of relate it to, okay, how much time am I going to spend there? And so I initially did it that way, which I changed shortly after I started, because I realized that there's so much more involved on the flight side than there is just with showing up with my camera and, letting it rip at a wedding and, dancing and, drinking with everybody and doing that thing, right? Like it's a different beast altogether. So the flight side of things, I started off quite low, and there's two reasons behind that. One that I just mentioned, I guessed, and second was I didn't have anything to show. So I had to just get some samples. So I did the first couple jobs for absolute dirt, and they worked out great though. So I was able to get a lot of good material from my portfolio and then take them to the next one. So for example, the first golf course I did, I think I charged something like $250 or something like that for about 7 or 8 holes of a golf course. So doing fly-throughs, so from tee to green, and then some shots and some photos and things like that. And then the last golf course I did, I charged $4,500 for. So
Wow.
it was a learning process, and it helped me get to that next level of, having the portfolio to show, and then having the skill set to say, I've done this before and this is what I can do for you. And that worked out a lot better. Like I find, you can dream up a whole bunch of different things, but you can't always explain it to the client. If you can show them what you've done for another client and explain the benefits of it, and you don't have to say how you did it, but just say that you can do it, and then that speaks volumes in comparison to just describing it, saying, oh, I can do this and that for you at your golf course, and they're like, okay, well, trying to imagine it, I don't really imagine it as good as what you can do, so I don't see the value in it. But being able to show it, that really made a difference. And then for pricing, I created a little spreadsheet actually that I utilize to figure out what I'm going to do for pricing. And it takes into account everything from travel time to the price of fuel at the time, I guess for you guys, from how many miles I'm going to drive to get to the location, how much time I'm going to spend there, and how much time I'm going to spend in processing afterwards, to really figure out what pricing should look like. Because it's easy to get stuck in a trap of thinking like, oh, I just got offered $500 to do this job. But then if you end up driving 3-4 hours, and then you're there for 6 or 7 hours, then you have to drive 3-4 hours to get back. And then you're processing for a full other day after that. You start dividing it up by the number of hours and amount of work you put into it, then the wear and tear on your vehicle and how much you spent on gas, et cetera, and it's not that great anymore. So that's why I created that little spreadsheet to show really what are my costs to get this done, and then how much profit am I looking to make on top of it.
Yeah, I think a spreadsheet's a really good way to go when it comes to pricing your stuff out. For drone pilots out there that may not be certified yet, talk to them about the benefits of getting certified.
Oh, it's there's the legal side of things, then there's also the perception side of things from clients. I think it's important to be able to show that you're on the up and up, and you're looking to do things the proper way, because there is that threat of being fined yourself as a pilot, and then the client being fined as well for hiring a non-certified pilot down in the States under the FAA rules. So it's good that you can show them that you're serious, and this is what you're gonna give them professional service, and you're not just somebody who went over to Best Buy and picked up a drone and says, hey, now I'm a business, right? Like you're showing that you're committed to it. You've got insurance if they require it, and it's just overall the professional image is increased when you have your license.
Yeah, absolutely. And how long did it take for your drone business to, really start to take off where you could do it full time? And did you have any other jobs to help supplement your income?
It was, the first year I was doing a combination of the drone thing as well as the weddings and portraits. And so it took the first year, I picked up the drone in January of 2014, and then I started flying those first golf courses at the end of May, I think, or early June. And then some real estate and stuff started falling into place. Then other things like inspections and oil and gas and things like that started to roll out quickly after that as well too. So I think the first year it wasn't enough to keep things going on its own. But by year 2, it really started to take off. So the first 2 years, I relied a lot on Google Ads. I was using Google AdWords to push people towards my website, and then it got ranked number 1 in Google for most search terms here. So I totally lucked out with that. So I stopped paying for advertising, but the volume of work didn't decrease either. So instead of spending $300-400 a month on Google Ads, I was spending zero and still getting the same amount of inquiries coming through. So it really started to pick up in year 2, and then from year 3, it just kept on growing and growing. One thing that's interesting is I get a question all the time, people saying, well, you've been doing it now for quite a while, and now there's so many other drone pilots that are out there, and what do you worry that that there's not going to be enough pie left? And I can relate it back to wedding photography and portraits and stuff too, is that there's a million photographers out there doing something similar, but you don't get hired for doing something similar, right? You get hired because you're doing good work every time. So I think I've have my track record to show that I've been able to do A, B, C, D consistently and professionally over the years, that so people keep coming back to me. There's always new companies and new people coming out with drones saying, I'll do that for $100, whereas Chris would do it for $1,000 instead. And you think like that's really going to take a cut into it, but I still get calls and I still get a lot of work from it that way. So there is a lot of pie out there, and if you do things the right way, you can still get a lot of work.
Yeah, if you show that you know what you're doing, and you do it professionally, and like I said earlier, if you make yourself an asset, people will really start to notice that. So
exactly.
For oil and gas inspections, that's something I really want to get into. And my dad actually works for an oil company over in the Middle East. Still, he's been with this company for like 30 years. And so every time he at work hears of an article about some drone pilots helping out the oil and gas industry, he like shoots it over to me and he's like, hey, you got to email this company. Maybe they'll hire you, So it's super cool to see that oil and gas is such a promising field to get into with drone photography and surveying. Talk a little bit about how you got into that and the process of inspecting something.
Yeah, so it was, again, one of those things that just kind of grew out of just doing so many other different types of work and working in other industries, where I just got a call one day from one of the larger companies saying, we have this project where we want to look at some of our flare stacks, but we don't want to climb up there because it's hazardous. We don't want to turn them off, et cetera, et cetera. So we want to take a closer look. Can you do that with the drone? I was like, well, I think so. So I went out there and ran, did some assessments on the site just to make sure that like all the guide wires and stuff like that weren't going to cause an issue. And then sure enough, was able to pull off a series of inspections for them on their stacks. And it was an immense time saver and financial saver for them, being able to run the inspections without having to shut down or put anybody up there in harm's way. So that was really good. One thing with working on the oil and gas side of things is safety is paramount in a lot of things, but especially in oil and gas, that you have to be able to prove that you're safe. So obviously PPE is very important. A lot of the places won't let you on unless you're wearing certain fire resistant clothing, coveralls, that kind of stuff. Gloves. Gloves are an interesting one because I prefer to fly without gloves. I don't have the same feel for it. Like I lose a little bit of that tactile feel when I'm wearing gloves. So I had one site that was insistent, and they said, well, you're not coming on unless you're wearing gloves. So I got it done. And in that one, it was just photos. It wasn't video. So I was able to make it work. But for the most part, I've been able to say, like, this is the reason why I'm not wearing gloves. And based on where we're positioned, I don't think it's a hazard. So they've run their assessments and stuff like that and figured out, okay, yeah, you're good to go without gloves on this certain location. But yeah, it's really, it's kind of a game changer for a lot of those sites where they can, do inspections, they can create imagery, they can do like aerial surveys, create maps and models of their developments, how much of their land, like how much mining they've done, what they have left, what have they already removed, the health and status of the tailings ponds, a variety of different things. Like there's there's way more than you can just initially think of. Like once you get out there on site, then they start asking like, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you look at this for us? Can you look at that? And it just keeps going and going. So we're lucky here in Alberta. We've got a lot of oil and gas. So I've had some great success heading up there, and again, doing things that I never thought of. Like golf courses were my thing that I thought I was going to do at the start, and it's grown into so many other things and hardly any golf courses. So it's good to, remember you can diversify on the fly, right? Like you can find other things, and, different types of work can come your way.
Yeah, I definitely believe in diversification in all aspects of life, especially with your business. I think that it's important to diversify because there's so much out there. So why not just grab a little bit of all of it? Down here in Southern California, we've got one of the biggest oil refineries in North America. And that's like a goal of mine to be able to, inspect their equipment and everything. So let me ask you this. Do you think cold calling is still a good way to get business, or do you think that, email is a better way to go now?
I haven't had too much success with cold calling. I find that it's on the drone side of things where I've had, very good success is when someone has come through an ad or through Google or something and found my website and seen my previous work, and then has interpreted that into how it can help them. So I think, cold calling is tough. What you could do is, if you could do some sample work somewhere else, like you don't have to, like say if you're looking to do stack inspections or something like that, you can do an inspection on some kind of different tower, like a water tower or something like that, right? You can show the detail that you can get out of that, and what, how it worked and how safe you were, and you can do like a little case study on it. And then you can use that to promote to companies such as the large oil and gas facility that you have down there. I think it's easier if you can show something to bring into it first. But a lot of companies now are going with their own internal drone teams. But it's interesting because a lot of the ones that I worked with years ago, and then I've continued to work with now, is they have their own teams, yet they still call me to do stuff. So I think it's a combination of they're too busy, and maybe they don't have the right equipment, or they're not they don't have their licenses or certifications and things like that. So it's you get a certain skill that you can hone, and you can really become the person they call when they want that done, right? And like, even though they have their own drone team, you might call up, company X and say, hey, I can do this and that. And they say, well, we have our own people. And they say, okay, let me just show you what I can do. And if you can get them to look and you can show what they can do and what you can do, and it fits better than what they have going on, like that's definitely going to start the wheels turning, right?
Yeah, definitely. So I don't know if you have, but I'm kind of curious. Have you done any search and rescue stuff?
No. So we have the rules here are that you can't do search and rescue unless you have a special permit. So it's a separate thing. But I do have every Monday night I host a mastermind, an online mastermind with drone pilots from around the world, but mostly the States. And some of them have worked in search and rescue, and they've worked with command teams and things like that to conduct search and rescue. But I think the important takeaway from it is that you have to coordinate. You can't self-deploy. You can't just show up and say, okay, I've got a drone, I'm going to help with this, because they might have other air assets that are there, and it could cause a conflict, and then you could prevent somebody who really knows what they're doing from doing it because you're there flying your drone, right? So it's important to liaise with command staff and search teams first to see if there's any interest in it, and then if there is, then if you can help, make sure that it's all on board with what they're trying to do. And same with other things like fires and that kind of stuff. I spoke with actually two guys recently on my podcast. I spoke with a guy named Derek Ward from LA Fire, and then Romeo Dersher. He works for DJI, but he works on the public safety side of things, and he also helped out with some of the was it Camp Fire, the large fire in California, and so he helped out with those. So Derek and him were both on those, and yeah, they were great chats where they gave insight as to what it looked like from their public safety side of things, and then how they were able to fly and capture data and assist while working in conjunction with command teams on the ground as well as other air assets. So it's a search and rescue and public safety are huge areas, but it's important to, don't, like I said, don't self-deploy. Always make sure that you work correctly and legally with the command teams before you go.
Absolutely. So as far as your podcast goes, first of all, what's the podcast called?
So the Drone Trainer Podcast.
Drone Trainer Podcast. Okay. So how long have you been doing that for?
Just hit the 2-year mark. So I just had my 100th episode about a week and a half ago. So I've spoken with pilots from all around the world, and I've always been an avid podcast listener. So I listen to a variety of different shows, and then one day I just thought, like, I wonder if I can do this myself, and what's not out there that I can create a little niche for. So I listened to quite a few different drone shows, and they're all excellent in their own regard. Like some will speak to the executives of a company, some talk about the news, some just talk amongst themselves. Like, it's a variety of different things. And one thing that I thought was missing was chatting with the actual drone pilots that were out there. So I created the Drone Trainer Podcast, and what I do now is every week I find somebody different from around the world that's flying. They're not just the boss of the company that directs people, like they're the ones that are actually out there, as an independent drone pilot, or working as a part of a company, but still they're the ones on the controls, and chat with them about what's working in their business, what's not working in their business, how they're marketing, things that are profitable for them, things that they've abandoned because they're not working, and then flight tips and tricks and skills and editing tips and a variety of different things. So it's been a great journey so far. Like I said, just published my 100th episode a week and a half ago, and it's been great. I listen to my own podcast, which might sound weird, but I learn from it afterwards. Like when I'm in the conversation, I pick up a lot of info, but I find after, when I'm not having to concentrate on keeping the flow going, I can really pick up a lot of information from each of the pilots. So it's self-serving in a way that I can learn a lot while I'm having these discussions, but also being able to share it with everybody around the world at the same time. It's been very rewarding.
Yeah, I absolutely love that aspect of, getting to learn on your own podcast. I think it's huge. I mean, I listen to my own podcast as well. It's okay. You're not the only one. Don't worry. Don't feel weird about it.
Well, I thought I was at first. I'm like, that's kind of weird. I'm listening to my own show, but it's good to hear that you do it too.
Oh yeah,
you can learn from it.
Oh, for sure. And it's also an excuse for me to, catch up with friends of mine that are freelancers that I haven't talked to in a minute. So doing a podcast is so beneficial in so many ways, and I absolutely love being able to host one. So, let's talk about your Mastermind class. What's it called, and what do you do in it?
So it's at thedronetrainer.com. It's called Drone Impact. So every Monday night we get together on Zoom, which is an online meeting platform. So it's a video and audio based thing. So regardless of where you are, we can all get together on it. So what we do is we have an agenda that we get to every week. So members, if they have something that they want to discuss relating to drones, be it anything from flight tips and skills to regulatory to questions about how do I do this or that, I put the agenda together. We hit that first, so that's about 45 minutes to an hour depending on how many topics we get, and then we open up the floor. So the meetings, they range in length from an hour to sometimes we've had 2.5 3 hour meetings. Like, there's really no, if people want to still keep rolling with it and discussing what they're doing with drones, it's you can keep on going. And I think the real cool thing about it is that we have members from, they're mostly based in North America. However, we do have a couple of European and Australian members too. It's just tough for the Europeans to make the time slot. We have one Swedish gentleman that's very committed to it. So he wakes up at 3 a.m. his time every Monday night, or every Tuesday morning, I guess, to be able to join us. Because we do it at 6 p.m. Pacific and 9 p.m. Eastern time. So he wakes up and comes in there. But having that wide range of people in, everywhere, from Canada, U.S., east to west, being able to share their experiences. So what's working right now in real time, and, getting the wheels turning and holding each other accountable for what you can't just say you're going to do some stuff and then not go out and do it. Right. So it's really good having that group together. Like, everybody's friendly with each other. Like, at first it was, everyone's quiet and trying to, not really sure what to say, but now it's really good. Like, it's a great group where everybody gets together and there's a little bit of banter in between topics and stuff. Like, it's a good, it's a really cool group that I've created. So yeah, we run those every Monday, and it's been working out excellent.
So is that like you pay to join? How does it work? How do you become a part of it?
Yeah, so I started off initially doing it for free, and it was astonishing to me, but after reading a couple books, it started to make sense. Is when I did it for free, the engagement was low, and people wouldn't always show up, and it would be kind of, you know, like I had sometimes where I had in my calendar every Monday night, this is the thing, and it would be like me and one other person, or a couple times I had just me, and I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, this isn't working. Like, the theory, it should work, but it's not working. So I said, well, I'm going to put a price tag on it. And it sounds funny thinking like, if it doesn't work for free, why is it going to work for a price? But it did. So I attached a small price tag to it. So right now it's $19 a month. So if you think of like $5 a week or a little bit less than that, to come, and then you get access to, I got a private Facebook community, and then all the different training courses, and then Rolodex of all the members and stuff like that. So it's more than just the meetings, but yeah, since adding that on, like, engagement is so much better than it was before, and we get, people attend every week religiously now, and it's amazing how that transition took place. So it's not a big profit center or anything like that for me. It's just something that I found that worked, and right now I'm looking for ways to take the money that I bring in from it and then try and give it back to the community in some way. So I'm thinking about doing a like monthly photo contest or monthly content contest of some kind, like have a theme, like shot, like, I don't know, just thinking like, say, a shot of a church or something like that, right? And have everybody submit, and then the members can vote on it, and then the winner gets like a gift card or something like that, right, from the funds that come in. So I'm exploring different ideas like that right now, but even without that, it's still working out very good. Like the comments I get back from people, it's every meeting is so valuable, and people can learn an absolute ton from it. It's going great.
Hell yeah, dude. It's so cool. It's so cool to hear that you have something like that brings people together, and it helps people continue their education and gain knowledge as far as drones go. Who are some of your influences in the field of drone works?
So at the start, I was my own, because really there wasn't anybody that was around for me to learn from and really get influenced by. But now, I think I'm a big fan of Romeo Dersher with DJI, like working in their public safety and enterprise side of things. Like, he's such a genuine fellow that goes out and helps and does the right things for the right reasons, and he's a great ambassador for drones. And then on Instagram, there's a bunch of pilots that I love what they're doing, and like the different content style that they're putting together. Like there's a gentleman named Tom Nosuke down in Australia, and the like real dreamy photography, like his editing is just dreamy awesomeness. It's really, really cool. There's a girl named Sandrine Heck. She's from South Africa. She lives in Australia, but she travels around the world to create content, and she goes to a lot of exotic beach places and stuff like that, and creating things. So I'd say, yeah, like those two, I always look forward to their content on Instagram, and then a variety of others. Like I love Instagram, especially on the drone side of things, because it's so visual, as everybody knows, and you can see what people have done and what they're doing. And what I saw somebody do recently was a before and after, because they heavily edit a lot of their photos, and I think it was Tom Nosuke actually, and he put a before and after. You could see the drastic change in it, and you think like, how do you go from this to that, right? And so I tried one of those myself, and it was quite fun, and people took to it very well, and they said like, show us how to do this, right? So it might be something else that I can add to my repertoire.
So what do you want for the future of your drone business? Do you have any goals? Do you have any projects coming up that you're excited about?
Just keep on growing it. I think the things have changed a little bit, where the frequency of the smaller jobs has gone down. However, the frequency of the larger jobs has increased. So I think that that's a good thing. Like if I can do less and make more, obviously that's a good thing in a variety of different industries. So I'm enjoying that. I'm not necessarily going all day every day. Maybe I'll do one or two a day now, as opposed to trying to jam in 5 or 6 different jobs in a day. But if they're bigger and they pay more and I'm doing less, then I'm really liking that transition and the way things have shifted in that regard. As for the training side of things, I enjoy being able to share all the knowledge that I've gained along the way. Like I said at the start, there was no one to teach me how, so I had to go over to a driving range that was by my house. So obviously in the winter, it's tons of snow. It's not open for golfers. So I just asked, can I use your range to fly and try and figure this thing out? And they said, sure. So it was all basically, trial and error to figure out how it all worked. And now that I've got that, I can share that with people. And I think that that's a great asset, like to be able to learn from somebody. Like even if it's not me, if you can find somebody that can be a voice for you and you like what they're doing with it, use that to your advantage, because it's going to help you get to where you want to be faster. That's why, coaches and things like that, they work so well, because they're not, they're not necessarily better than you, but they can help, push you to the next level and get your mindset in the right place and be able to get you, to those lofty goals that you should be setting for yourself and trying to achieve.
And then you said you had a actual course, right?
Yeah, I've got a couple of different ones. So I'm working on a couple of new ones right now. So I'm doing a basic and an advanced flight training, so strictly flight training course. But right now on the site, I've got a freebie that is the initial flight training. So it shows everything from takeoffs and landings to some basic drills to help get you out of a pinch. So it's good for new pilots that are starting off, that are trying to get used to their drone and how to fly it in certain orientations. And, ultimately you don't want to crash, especially if you bought an expensive drone as your first one. You don't want to crash that thing. So I go over a couple things that really help, prevent that from happening. And then on top of that, I have some paid ones as well too. So I've got my real estate specific one and then a mapping one. So on the real estate one, I basically take you on a fly along and I go do a real estate shoot. So I film myself doing the shoot and then how I edit it and how I approach everything to go along with it, and then provide all of the video files so you can edit along with me while we're going through it. And then the mapping thing is similar, where it's another fly along where create an aerial map of an area using ground control points and the theory behind how it's approached, and how to create actionable maps and models out of your content. So it's things that I picked up and learned along the way, because I didn't have anybody to teach me how to do it, and now it's it's my way to give back.
That's awesome. And what is something you know now that you wish you knew when you started?
Oh. I don't know if there's one thing. Like, I think if you're looking at it from a business side, I think the advice I have is just get at it. Don't paralyze yourself by overanalyzing things. Like, really, if you want to do it, then start doing it. And you can learn. There's so many different resources online. Like, you can go on YouTube. You can, find somebody in your area that you can learn from and just get at it. But really, I think one thing that I know actually now, when I look back on it from when I first started, is I would overshoot. So I would record, like, for example, if I was doing video, I would record an absolute ton of footage, and it was brutal during the editing process because I couldn't remember what was the good point and what I was trying to make, like what I was trying to capture with it. So it took forever to edit through. And what I've done now is I've been very deliberate. I'll plan my shot. I'll push record at the start, get the shot, and then stop it, so that when I get to the editing process, I've got little clips of things that I know that are good. And that has sped up my workflow immensely. Like, I can edit a video now in under an hour on the real estate side of things, where before, I remember it took me half a day to be able to get through all the footage. So I think it's a very good idea to be deliberate with your shots, and do the on and off recording thing. Some people still do the continuous record because they might catch something that they didn't intend on doing, which is a neat thought. But I find that when it comes down to editing, it's brutal because you end up with so much footage, and it makes it a lot more, it's a lot more time consuming.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's better to do, record, stop record instead of just continuously recording. I do it the same way you do. I like to save on editing time, so I think that's really good that you do it that way. All right, so any final advice, and plug your social media and where people can find you, your courses, your podcast, all the things.
Sure, yeah. Final advice is, just get at it and take advantage of the like any education that you can in relation to drones, because it's easy to buy one and then just launch it off your driveway and see what happens, right? But it's with all the resources that are out there now, you don't have to do that anymore, right? You can learn it. You can get a real good baseline for how to conduct things from the start, and take your time at the start. Like for your first flight, you don't need to go up to 400 feet just because you can. Stay low and slow. That's what I recommend at the start, is if you stay low and slow and keep things under control, you can slowly start going faster, right? It's like the first time you drove a car, you didn't floor it, right? Well, maybe you did. Like it sounds like a thing that happens, right? But it's it's good to start slow and do things in baby steps like that. For where to find me online, so I'm over at thedronetrainer.com, and then social media on Instagram and Twitter at The Drone Trainer. You can find me there, and then my podcast is The Drone Trainer Podcast, which you can find on Apple and Spotify and basically everywhere that podcasts exist.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, it was fun. Thanks for asking me to come on the show.
All right, that was a podcast with Chris Anderson, a professional drone pilot up in Alberta, Canada. If you guys are up in Alberta and you need some services, I would highly recommend that you hit Chris up. Sounds like he's got a lot of amazing things going on, and I love that he's giving back to his community by giving education. I think that giving back in the form of education is one of the greatest ways you can give back to your community. So thank you, Chris, for coming on the podcast. If you guys want to, study a little bit more for your drone flying skills, I highly recommend you check out The Drone Trainer, either the podcast, the course, the Monday Mastermind that they do. There's so many ways to get involved. So definitely check out some of Chris's stuff that he's got going on. Thank you guys for listening to another episode of Project Freelance. If you enjoyed this podcast, please do me a favor and give it a rating. 5 stars would be preferred, but give it whatever you feel it deserves. Give it a rating, give it some feedback, and if you do so, I will be sending you a signed photo print of mine. Any of my photos, it's going to be a surprise. Right now, I have a couple photos of an abandoned pool, a couple photos of the Saturn V rocket at NASA, and I've got plenty of photos of Spencer Glacier in Alaska, a photo that I took from a helicopter. So if you guys do leave some feedback and give a rating to the podcast, shoot me a DM at Project Freelance on Instagram or Project Freelance on Twitter. Character counts are a thing, so we had to go with Project Freelance. So yeah, shoot me a DM or shoot me a tweet, and I will get you guys a signed photo print of your choice. Thank you guys for enjoying another episode of this podcast. I will talk to you next week on Project Freelance. Stay strong, keep enduring, go out and go create something.